What would you do if the person you loved most in the world betrayed you on the worst day of your life? What if that person was your own child? This is the story of how my son's unforgivable choice on the day we buried his mother led me to a reckoning I never saw coming. A reckoning that would change both of our lives forever. Before we begin, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever felt that deep, gut-wrenching pain of injustice, then this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what happens next is a masterclass in poetic justice. And be sure to like this video and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all over the world. Now, let's get into it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. It was 8:30 on a Tuesday morning, the sky a flat, unforgiving gray, the kind of gray that seeps into your bones. I was standing in the kitchen I'd shared with my wife for 40 years, adjusting my black tie for the third time. It felt like a noose. On the granite countertop sat Eleanor's favorite mug, empty. A faint, ghostly smudge of her lipstick still clung to the rim. The house was silent. For 40 years, this kitchen had been filled with the sound of her humming, the smell of fresh coffee, the gentle rustle of the newspaper. Now it was just a museum of a life that was over. I picked up my phone, the weight of it feeling immense in my hand. I scrolled to my son's name, James. My thumb hovered over the call button. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders as if he could see me, and pressed it. It rang 4 times. When he finally answered, his voice was thick with sleep, and in the background I could hear laughter, upbeat music, the high, excited pitch of his wife, Chloe's voice, talking about balloons and caterers.
"Hello, Dad?" he mumbled. "James, it's me, the funeral. It's at 11:30. Don't be late." There was a pause. I heard him clear his throat. "Dad, we talked about this. Today is Chloe's birthday. We've been planning this for months. The band is already setting up. The chef is prepping. I can't just abandon her on her day. You understand, right?" I didn't say a word. I just stood there, listening to the hollow sound of my own breathing until he hung up. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood frozen for 3 full minutes, just staring at Eleanor's reading glasses lying next to the phone. A sliver of morning sun caught my wedding band, which I'd taken off and placed on the table, the same table Eleanor had polished just a week ago. On the counter lay the printed order of service for the funeral. James's name was listed as a pallbearer. I picked up a pen, my hand remarkably steady now, and drew a single, dark, decisive line through his name.
At the cemetery, the air was cold and smelled of damp earth and cut grass. 23 people had come to say goodbye to the woman who had been my anchor for 4 decades. Our son was not one of them. People kept turning, their eyes scanning the small crowd, looking for him. My sister-in-law, Carol, finally asked the question everyone was thinking. "Arthur, where's James?" I had prepared for this. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. He had an important prior commitment he couldn't break. I stood alone at the edge of her grave, the emptiness beside me a physical presence. That was his space. She had been so proud of that boy. She had bragged about him to her book club, her gardening friends, anyone who would listen. Even when he didn't show up to visit her during her chemo treatments, she defended him. "He's just busy, Arthur," she'd whisper, her voice weak. "He's building his own life. Young people, they need their space." The priest spoke about family, love, and eternity. I watched as clods of earth thudded dully onto the polished mahogany of her casket. With each shovelful, they weren't just burying Eleanor, They were burying every illusion I'd ever had about my son. On the drive home, my knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The passenger seat, her seat, was empty. She always insisted on driving her little Prius. "Your SUV is a gas guzzler, Arthur. Be kind to the planet." The radio started playing her favorite song, an old Bonnie Raitt tune. I stabbed the power button, silencing it. Our street hadn't changed. The manicured lawns, the freshly painted mailboxes. It was a life we had built together, brick by brick. I parked in the driveway and just sat there for a long moment, gathering the strength to walk into the house where she no longer was. The key turned in the lock with its familiar click. I hung the keys on the hook she had installed herself. It was a mundane action, but in the crushing silence, it felt monumental. No voice from the kitchen, no background TV. Just walls saturated with 40 years of memories.
I loosened my tie and sank into my old leather armchair. Brown, worn, comfortable. Eleanor always said it clashed with her floral curtains. For years, she'd asked me to replace it. I'd always brushed her off. Too busy, the business. Now those curtains would hang there forever. On the mantel, our wedding photo stared back at me. She was 23, beaming, wearing her grandmother's dress. We'd gotten married right here in Savannah, promising each other everything we had. I'd kept my promise. Maybe I'd kept it too well. The memories ambushed me. James's first steps, right there on this Persian rug, his chubby little hands reaching for Eleanor. Birthday parties with homemade decorations because we couldn't afford store-bought. She'd worked double shifts at the library while I was getting my construction firm off the ground. She never complained. Not when I was working 16-hour days. Not when we lived on mac and cheese for a week. "We're building this for James," she'd whispered to me at night when he'd fallen asleep between us, too small to sleep alone. Later, I found her well-worn Bible on her nightstand. A note card fell from its pages. I unfolded it. My heart stalled. "My dearest Arthur, please don't let James forget us. We gave him everything. I hope it was enough. All my love, E." My hands started to shake again. Worse this time. In the closet, I found the box she'd hidden away. Every report card from kindergarten through college. Every A was highlighted with a note in her elegant script, "So proud of our brilliant boy." Photos from his graduation, smiling in his cap and gown. All of it paid for with her overtime and my weekend side jobs. A cold, calculating numbness settled over me. I reached for the calculator on my desk. The house I'd helped him buy, $450,000. His wedding, another $80,000. His car, $35,000.
The MBA he never finished, $60,000. The Find Yourself trip to Europe, $30,000. Emergency loans, gifts for Chloe, her failed boutique. It all went into the ledger. The numbers kept climbing. The total sum, $978,500. Almost $1 million. Invested with love, without a contract, on faith alone, with zero return. I thought of my own father, a tough, quiet man from Oklahoma. When I left home, he'd pressed a $50 bill into my hand and said, "The world ain't owe you nothing, son. Go build your own." Maybe he was right. As dusk began to bleed into night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the growing darkness. A car pulled into the driveway. The engine didn't cut off. I didn't move. If James wanted to talk, he knew where to find me. After a few minutes, the engine revved and the car sped away. At 6 o'clock the next morning, I was at my massive oak desk, files spread out in neat, accusing rows. James's education, the house, the wedding. My coffee grew cold as I opened the calculator and began the final accounting, the one Eleanor had been too kind to ever do. The screen glowed in the dim light. Bank statements from the last 15 years. Every line item was a monument to my failure as a father. Transfer to James. Loan. Urgent. The rustle of paper was the only sound in my new, hollow reality. Then, the phone rang. The caller ID flashed. James. I watched it ring, watched his name light up the screen until the very last second before it went to voicemail. I picked up. "Hey, Dad." His voice was the same cheerful, polite, but slightly detached tone he always used when he wanted something. "Hope you're holding up after yesterday." He didn't ask how I was. He didn't mention the funeral. "I'm managing," I replied, my eyes fixed on the columns of numbers. "That's good. Listen, we've got a bit of a situation here. So Chloe's party last night was absolutely epic, but you know how it goes. We maybe went a little over the top." I could hear her voice in the background. "Tell him about the band." "We got a live band. Took everyone to that new seafood place. It was insane. I got Chloe this diamond tennis bracelet. She deserves the best, you know that. But now the bills are coming in. Long story short, we need to cover $1,200, like today." I did the math. Loan request number 47 in 15 years. Yesterday, I buried his mother. Today, he was asking for money for a birthday party? Just transfer it today, okay? Chloe's super stressed, and you know how she gets. I stayed silent. I looked at the photo of Eleanor, at all the neat columns of expenses, at the line that read, "James, total sum." "No," I said. The word felt foreign and powerful on my tongue. A pause. "What do you mean, no? Problems with the bank?" "No, James. I mean, I will not be giving you any more money." The cheerful tone vanished, replaced by something harder, colder. "Are you serious right now? After everything we've been through this week?" "We?" He said we, as if he'd been by my side at the cemetery and not dancing at a party. "You're 35 years old, James." "So what? Does that mean I can't count on my father for help?" Chloe's voice again in the background. "Tell him we already spent it. We need that money." I said no. It was the first time in my life I had ever denied him anything. His voice rose in pitch. "This is unbelievable. Mom dies and you suddenly get cheap? She would have hated this." The manipulation was so cold, so practiced. How many times had he played this card? How many times had Eleanor and I given in because, "But he's our son"? "She wanted you to be at her funeral," I said, my voice flat. His breathing sharpened on the other end of the line. "Fine, you know what? Fine, we'll figure it out. We'll max out the credit cards, we'll ask Chloe's parents. But don't expect us to come around if this is how you're gonna be." It was a threat, and it had always worked before. James's presence in our lives had been conditional on our payments. "I understand," I said calmly. "What do you understand?" "That everything is perfectly clear. Take care of yourself, James." I hung up the phone. I had ended the call on my terms, for the first time in 35 years.
I opened my laptop and pulled up his employee file. Tomorrow, we would have a different conversation, not as father and son, but as CEO and employee. He wanted a stranger? He was about to get one. The next day, I walked into the offices of Wright Construction at 7:30 a.m., a full 2 hours before James usually sauntered in. On the wall of management photos was his portrait, wearing the suit I'd bought him, a confident, almost arrogant smile. Today, I looked at it with new eyes. I saw not pride, but privilege, not confidence, but entitlement. In my office, I laid out the dossier: 8 years of employment, late reports, complaints from foremen, inflated expense accounts, project delays caused by 3-hour business lunches, lost clients. I had overlooked it all. He's still learning, Eleanor would say. But these documents were a damning indictment. Any other employee would have been fired years ago. At 8:45, I called in Sarah Jenkins, our head of HR, a sharp, no-nonsense woman. She listened calmly. "Prepare the termination paperwork," I said. She didn't flinch, just nodded. "Security escort?" "Yes, standard protocol." At 9:32, James swaggered into the office, late as usual, joking with the receptionist about his raging hangover. His laughter echoed through the foyer. Colleagues glanced nervously at my closed door. He was pouring himself coffee, completely oblivious. I pressed the intercom button on my desk. "James, my office, now." "Sure thing, Dad. Just getting some coffee." "Now, James." The silence that followed was electric. He knew. His footsteps approached down the hall. The door opened. Sarah was sitting next to me, a folder in her hands. He froze. "What's all this? A performance review?" He tried to joke, but his voice cracked. "James, effective immediately, your employment with Wright Construction is terminated." He let out a nervous laugh. "You're joking. Is this some kind of lesson?" I slid the folder across the desk. "Review and sign, please." His fingers trembled as he took the papers. He read them, and with each paragraph, he paled. This was no lesson. This was a severance. "This is a family business," he finally sputtered. "This decision is based on your performance and disciplinary record. A restructuring. Nothing personal. This is about the phone call yesterday. I apologized." I pressed a button on my desk. The door opened, and a security guard, calm, professional, stepped in. James's eyes went wide. "Mom would never have allowed this." The guard took a step forward. James looked from me to the guard and back again. The reality of it crashed down on him. "Dad, please," he whispered, his bravado utterly gone. He grabbed the photo of Chloe from his desk, a final desperate play. "Think about what this means. For the family. For your future grandchildren." I looked him dead in the eye. I have thought about it. I watched from my window as he shoved his few pathetic personal effects into the trunk of his car. His shoulders shook with either rage or despair. I didn't know which. He looked back at the building one last time. I turned away. Sarah returned with the signed paperwork. "All his access has been revoked." I took his photo down from the management wall and placed it face down in a drawer. The empty space looked cleaner. The second act of the play arrived right on schedule. An hour later, there was a sharp rap on my door. Chloe burst in, her hair slightly disheveled, her face a mask of fury. James trailed behind her, looking like a whipped dog. "How dare you humiliate my husband like that?" she shrieked, not even attempting civility. I didn't stand. I didn't react to the theatrics. "Chloe, please," James muttered, trying to hold her back. "We need that money, Arthur. This business is family. James has a right to it. This is a private office. You need to leave, I said, my voice level. We're entitled to severance. He worked here for 8 years. You owe us. James was paid as a contractor. No formal employment contract exists. There are no grounds for severance. She switched tactics, going for the jugular. Eleanor would be sick to see what you're doing. This is a senile breakdown. You're tearing this family apart. I clenched my jaw but remained calm. It was all going according to a script I'd seen them rehearse 100 times. Dad, I know I messed up with the funeral, James pleaded, genuine panic in his eyes now. I'm sorry, but firing me, it will destroy us. What would Mom want? What family? I asked quietly. What family are you preserving? Chloe resorted to direct threats. We'll sue. James is entitled to a share of the inheritance. We know about the life insurance policy. Everything is in my name, I said calmly. The business, the assets, everything. She fell silent, then hissed, We'll see about that. I pressed the button for security. 2 guards appeared. Her resistance was loud, messy, and utterly futile. The entire office heard her screams as she was escorted out. James was left alone in my office. He looked broken. I'm all you have left, he whispered, the words designed to gut me. Instead, they just solidified my resolve. I looked at the man before me, a stranger who shared my DNA, and spoke the plain truth. You are a person who used to be my son. He seemed to shrink before my eyes. For a split second, I saw the little boy who used to run to me after school. But it was just a moment. Then only the stranger remained. He left without another word. I didn't stop there. Revenge is a hot emotion. What I was building was cold, permanent, and just. I went to see my lawyer, Robert Vance, a man I'd trusted with my business for 20 years. His office was all sleek lines and panoramic views of the Savannah riverfront. Arthur, he said, shaking my hand firmly, how are you holding up? I'm managing, Robert. I need to make some changes to my paperwork. After the passing of a spouse, that's standard. We'll update the beneficiaries. No, I said. I want to rewrite my will entirely. I want James excluded completely. He seemed to shrink before my eyes. For a split second, I saw the little boy who used to run to me after school. But it was just a moment. Then only the stranger remained. He left without another word. I didn't stop there. Revenge is a hot emotion. What I was building was cold, permanent, and just. I went to see my lawyer, Robert Vance, a man I'd trusted with my business for 20 years. His office was all sleek lines and panoramic views of the Savannah riverfront. Arthur, he said, shaking my hand firmly, how are you holding up? I'm managing, Robert. I need to make some changes to my paperwork. After the passing of a spouse, that's standard. We'll update the beneficiaries. No, I said. I want to rewrite my will entirely. I want James excluded completely. He was silent for a long moment. You need to explain your reasoning. I told him everything. The missed funeral, the birthday party, the demand for money. His face grew graver with every word. I want to create a foundation, the Eleanor Wright Foundation. The entire business, my assets, everything goes into it. Scholarships, cancer research, everything she cared about. James and any of his descendants are to be excluded from everything. Robert nodded, a look of respect in his eyes. Then we don't just need a foundation, we need an ironclad trust, so it can never be challenged. We spent the next few days methodically dismantling James's financial life. I removed him from all bank accounts, investment portfolios, pension plans. Robert helped me structure it all. The creation of the foundation gave me an unexpected sense of peace. Eleanor's memory would have a future. She would have been proud of this. I didn't have to lift a finger for the next part. Savannah, for all its size, is a small town where reputation is currency. The stories spread like wildfire. Not from me. I simply stopped covering for him. He chose a birthday party over his own mother's funeral. Told his father his mother wasn't coming back, but his wife's party was once a year. The whispers became a roar. Chloe was asked to leave her exclusive yoga studio. Their usual table at the club was suddenly unavailable. James's membership of the golf club was revoked. Their credit cards were mysteriously declined at boutiques where they were once treated like royalty. Their world, built on a foundation of my money and their social climbing, began to crumble from the inside out. I watched from a distance, not with malice, but with a cold, detached acknowledgement. These weren't my actions. They were the consequences of theirs. The final blow came from the bank. James and Chloe had missed payments on their mortgage. I was the co-signer. The bank manager called me, expecting another bailout. "Will you be covering the payment, Mr. Wright?" he asked. "No," I said. "In fact, I'm revoking my guarantee." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Sir, that will trigger foreclosure proceedings." "I'm aware. Please proceed." I drove by their house on the day of the auction. I watched from my car as they stood on the sidewalk, watching their life being sold off to the highest bidder. Chloe was in tears. James just looked numb. He saw me, and his face contorted in understanding. He started toward my car, but I just drove away. I heard through the grapevine that Chloe left him a month later. She married for success, she apparently told him, not for this. He was alone, jobless, and drowning in debt. A year later, on a bright May morning, I walked through the live oaks of Bonaventure Cemetery. A bouquet of fresh daisies, Eleanor's favorite, in my hand. I looked healthier, calmer, like a man who had finally set down a burden he'd been carrying for a lifetime. I stopped at her gravestone, smooth gray granite. Eleanor Wright, beloved wife, mother, and friend. I knelt, arranged the flowers, and spoke to her softly. 20 scholarships, Ellie. 20 kids are in school because of you. We donated $250,000 to the oncology wing at the hospital, in your name. And for your birthday, we're opening that community center for kids. The building's ready. I smiled. Her legacy was alive. It was thriving. I'd heard James was working at a gas station on the highway outside of town, divorced. Chloe had remarried some restaurant owner and moved to Atlanta. I felt no pain, only peace. On my way home, I stopped at a small, unassuming diner called the Cozy Corner, and behind the counter, wiping down a Formica table, was James. He looked older, thinner. His hair was unkempt, his posture defeated. He saw me and froze. We looked at each other for a long moment. Then he walked over. "How are you, Dad?" he asked, his voice quiet. "I'm well, thank you," I said calmly. I know apologies don't bring anything back, but I am sorry." "No, James, don't apologize. That's not the word." He nodded, his eyes on the floor. "I know. I understand now. I didn't lose money or things. I lost people, and I lost myself." He finally looked up, and for the first time, I saw real tears in his eyes. No performance, just raw and unfiltered regret. "All you and Mom ever wanted was for me to love you, not your wallet. I see that now."
I nodded. I did what I had to do. I don't regret it. Your mother would have approved. He nodded back. Yeah, she would have. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't make promises. We just stood there in a silence that wasn't comfortable, but wasn't hostile either. I eventually bought a small cottage on the outskirts of town, near the water. It was quiet, modest, a world away from the big empty house full of memories. I wasn't running from anything. I was finally walking toward myself. Months later, James showed up at my cottage unannounced. He knocked quietly. "Can I come in?" He brought a jar of blackberry jam. "I made it myself," he said. We sat on the porch in silence as the sun set. He told me he'd gotten a job fixing equipment at the local technical college. The pay was small, but it was honest. He delivered medicine to shut-ins on the weekends. Not for show, not for photos, just because. He wasn't the man we'd hoped he'd become, but he was finally becoming a man. I didn't forgive him that day. Forgiveness was a long road. But I saw him, really saw him, not as my failed son, but as a broken human being trying, however clumsily, to glue the pieces back together. One evening, I got a letter from the city council. The small park near the elementary school was being renamed Eleanor Wright Memorial Park. I drove there. The sign was simple, understated. Children were laughing and running on the paths. Parents sat on benches. There was life there, joy. Eleanor wasn't gone. She was right there, in the sunlight, in the laughter, in the daisies planted by the gate. I had lost a son, but I had found myself. And in the quiet, steadfast peace of my new life, I realized that was enough. And that was my story. A story of love, betrayal, and finally, peace. But I want to hear from you now. What's the most satisfying comeuppance or act of poetic justice you've ever witnessed? Let me know your stories down in the comments. And if this resonated with you, if you believe that sometimes hard boundaries are the kindest thing you can set, then share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about life, loss, and finding the strength to do what's right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.